Hi everyone, it's me, Rachel, and I am here today to do my April reading wrap-up. April has been the most successful month so far this year in regards to reading. I think mostly because it was made up of readathons. I participated in the rybsat readathon, which went on for an extended week instead of the 1 week. It was 2 weeks instead, which was awesome because I got a lot more read. Then there was Tome Topple. That went on for 2 weeks, and recently, yesterday actually, was Dewey's 24-hour readathon, which was my first time participating in that particular readathon, and it was really fun, let me tell you. So we'll get started with what I read for rybsat. Alright, so first I read for rybsat Appointment with Death by Agatha Christie, which tied into another book that I read, Death on Demand by Carolyn G. Hart. There's a few characters mentioned in here that were in here. Also, Annie's cat from Death on Demand. The cat's name is Agatha, so there's the direct mystery tie-in, which was awesome. I think I rated this either a 3 or 4 star, and I rated this one a 5 star. This was fantastic, and I'll be reading the rest of the series. Next, I don't have the physical copy with me, but I read The Mysterious Affair of Styles by Agatha Christie. This was kind of traveling over from March Mystery Madness, where I didn't get to finish everything. That's why there's a lot of mysteries in the beginning here. And I think also The Appointment with Death I didn't quite finish in time when I did my March wrap-up, but that's okay. We're counting it for this month. So Mysterious Affair of Styles, I didn't think it was Agatha Christie's best work, but it was still enjoyable. I listened to an audio, but I think I really should read it in its physical form to better understand it and understand what's really going on, because I got a little confused. Next, I read Terry Pratchett's The Color of Magic. This is the first Discworld novel, and I was so excited to read this, and it does not disappoint. I think it was probably on par with my expectations, and I believe I gave it a 4 or 5 star. I will be happily continuing this series, and hopefully maybe one day reading all of the books. My cat just stole a piece of my pizza. Anyway, next, I feel like I'm missing something. Probably not. Oh my gosh, why don't I have this set up? I'm so sorry. Click. Click. So sorry. Okay. Next, once I finish that, Tome Topple started, and I read this. So Tome Topple and rybsat kind of overlapped each other this year, but I managed to finish Death on Demand and then start When Christ and His Saints Slept by Sharon K. Penman, which was a very interesting read. It's about Maud, who is Henry I's daughter, and how she tried to claim the throne in her own right and reign in her own right. And it's a very inspiring story. It's very, I wouldn't say very feministic, but it does have feministic elements to it. And it makes you think back to that time and how women were treated. And even like the ones that were high in power were still respected. And they kind of went together. But this also, at the end, introduced Eleanor Aquitaine and Henry II, who reigned after Stephen I. And I think the whole history around that is really interesting. There's so much to this novel. But one thing, if you're planning on reading this, and you do not like battles, or you do not like learning about battles, I probably would stay away from it, because there is a lot of detail about all the various battles that took place within, I think it was 18 years, so you need to kind of stick with it and bear through it. I found that I was mostly interested in the everyday life of, oh goodness, so Ranalph, and him and his family, and more like the lay culture, if you would like to put it that way, I was more interested in. So then I finished that. I finished that the day after Tome Topple ended, but that was okay with me. I still count it as a one read for Tome Topple. Next, I finished something that I was reading off and on for a little while, and that was Misadventures of a Garden State Yogi by Ryan Leaf. This was another interesting read. I absolutely adore memoirs, and this one was kind of looking forward to because it was kind of seemed like one of those ones where if anything can go wrong, will go wrong, and it does. There was some surprising aspects of it that I thought was interesting. Some things that I thought was enlightening. I think the most, and these are not my tabs, I bought this used, so a lot of the tabs I kind of agreed with, some of the tabs I don't agree with being the special parts. The most interesting thing in here, I think, was when he went to, oh my gosh, his massage therapist, and he was new, and he goes in, and here he went into her apartment, watched her walk around naked, and then snuck out and went to her office. Hey, Banana, it's my kitty. So I thought that was interesting. It has nothing to do with yoga, that part, but a little bit thought-provoking, but not too much, where you would get lost in thinking and theology or anything like that. It just kind of makes you think a bit. But I gave this a 3-star. Next, I read Lumberjanes. I read, I believe, the Bind Up Volume 2 is number 5 through 9, I think. And I rated that at 4-star. I love Lumberjanes. I think this is one of the better comics out there, and I'll be very happy to read more of it. And I think I actually took out the next 3 on Hoopla with the rest of my April credits through there. Next, I read for In Between, Tome Topple and Dewey's is The Bad Beginning by Lemony Snicket, and this is the first in the series of Unfortunate Events. I haven't read this since middle school, and I absolutely adored it then, and I still adore it now, but this time, instead of reading it physically, I listened to the audiobook, and Tim Curry narrates, and Tim Curry, I love him so much. He's so talented, and he really brings this to life. In here, he's just the narrator, and it's dramatized with other characters as well. There's music and different voices for the different characters, so it really brings it to life. But as I went on to read, let's listen to the Reptile Room for Dewey's, which I'll get to in a second. It doesn't have the dramatized, but it's still really good. But before that, sorry, a little bit of tangent, skipping over one, I read an erotica, which I normally don't pick up, but it seemed very intriguing, and it was, I won't lie. This was submitted to the Marquess by M. Brown, and honestly, I read a little bit of E.L. James's 50 Shades of Grey, and that was, and submitted to the Marquess was better than 50 Shades of Grey in terms of language, first of all. Second of all, the content of what happens, it's just so much better. And the writing style was really nice too. The only problems that I had with this one was that there were some awkward words used. Like, she tried to sprinkle in some older English phrases, but then she took modern slang for various body parts and tried to implant them, so it kind of made it awkward, and it made me feel kind of uncomfortable. But besides that, it was actually pretty good. So anyway, getting back to the Reptile room. Still fantastic. Narrated by Tim Curry, and he does a fantastic job. He kind of channels Nigel Thornberry from the Wild Thornberrys, and it just cracked me up because I loved that show growing up. But excellent book. I actually did rate the first and second book of the series of Unfortunate Events as a 5-star, and they are well-deserved 5 stars. I think, though, I was reading some of the reviews on Goodreads, and a lot of people had a problem that, oh, it tells you the definition, some of the words. It's like, yeah, but I guess you kind of have to grow up with these to understand why and see the humor in it, and I don't know. But that was my first Dewey read, and I read it on the ride to work. I read it, or rather listened to it, at lunch, and then a ride home from work, and then I listened to it during my bath after work and try to relax for the night and go on to my other reads. So this was an excellent, excellent book to listen to. I'll be looking forward to listening to the third and all the other ones in this series. Be fun. Okay, so next for Dewey's Readathon, I finished I Could Pee on This. This is a little collection of poems supposedly by cats, but does capture the cat qualities of cats, if you will. Cats are very interesting creatures, and especially my orange cat, Anna. She left. She stole my piece of pizza and she left. But cats are kind of sophisticated in a way, but they're also very funny. So I think it captures the essence of a cat very nicely. And it was a nice quick read for Dewey's. It only probably took me a half an hour to read, and I loved it. Next, it was a book I started reading about 2 years ago. It's a bind-up of 3 novellas by Arthur Schniztler. This particular bind-up is called Desire and Delusion. There's 3 novellas. The first is called Flight into Darkness, which I hardly remember because I read that 2 years ago. The next one was Dying, which I read between Tom Topple and Dewey's, and it was pretty good. And I also learned that you really need to read forwards with these classic novels, especially if it's a different culture, because there was a lot of important information that I should have read in the forward to help me understand this. But for some reason, I don't like reading forwards, so I kind of missed out. The other one that I read for Dewey's was Fraulein Elise, and that was very interesting. I read the little snippet at the forward for Fraulein Elise, and apparently during the early 1900s, the culture in Vienna was obsessed with dying and obsessed with suicide. So all these stories have that implanted in them, and you need to kind of understand that sort of culture with it to recognize how these novellas were worked into it. So I kind of enjoyed this. I gave it a 3-star. It's really not my taste, but it was a Christmas present from a friend. So, and I have another bind-up of Arthur Schniztler as well, that she gave me last year, so I will be working on that very soon, just to get that out of the way and tell her I read it. So that's the last book I finished for Dewey's, but then I started one this morning. I actually finished Fraulein Elise this morning. Woke up around 5 o'clock to finish it. But then I had enough time to start Barnhart, which I love memoirs. I forgot how much I love memoirs, and Jenna Wogenreich is one of my probably favorite memoir authors. She authored Made from Scratch, which I read in high school, and then inspired me to do more gardening and maybe look into homesteading. This is also another memoir about homesteading, but this is would probably consider it the second leg of her journey, where she moves to Vermont and she has a nice plot of land, whereas when she was living in Idaho, she didn't have that much land and she could probably only do a few raised beds, but now she has the opportunity to do more. I only got to page 64, and I kind of intend on finishing it either tonight or tomorrow. But this is excellent, and if you're interested in homesteading or raising your own food, I highly recommend Joanna Vogelreich. She also writes for Other Earth News, Huffington Post, and she also has a blog called Cold Antler Farm. If anyone's interested in that, please check that out. That's it for now. I'm not counting this in my April read, but I'll be counting it in my May read. Alright guys, I hope you were inspired. My goodness, I'm talking too much. By some of the books that I read this month, I'd be really happy to continue on any of these series that I started. I really should not be starting any more series at this point because it's getting a little bit ridiculous. Alright everyone, see you later. Bye!